Hello, everybody. Welcome to this month's learning series. We're so happy to have you here with the Urban and Community Forestry Society. I'm Leslie Burkus. I'm the Executive Director of the Society and always happy to welcome you here today. We love having members and friends with us, and we've got a really exciting workshop for you today. It's an hour and a half, all focused to tree ordinances. We know as tree people, urban foresters, that this is one of our most powerful tools to help protect trees in our communities. So we really want to help you dig in. So I'm going to start going through a few slides. I want to keep us right on time so we have a lot of time to talk with one another. Today is going to be time for breakout rooms and what we're calling canopy conversations. This is a chance for people across the globe, across the country to really dig in together and help solve each other's issues. We're hearing loud and clear from members and friends that this is one of the best ways that they can learn, and that is the power of a network. So that's going to be our roadmap for today. I'll cover that here in a second, but first I want to do a little bit of introduction. So if we first, of course, want to thank our sponsors, and we thank Bartlett Tree Experts for being our exclusive learning series partner. Together with Bartlett, we share the goal of raising the bar for urban foresters, bringing more science and research into urban forestry and arboriculture. So we thank them for their ongoing support of this learning series. And we thank all of our members and sponsors, and we especially thank you as the members. Members are who make this possible. Our members are large. We have 2,100 members across the globe, and together we're networking, we're raising the voice on urban forestry, and that is the power of association. So if you are a member, we thank you. You are who make this possible. If you are not a member, we need you. We want you here. Please join us as soon as you can because it's better within the network, it's better within a group, and so we hope that you'll join us when the time is right. So today, we're going to just do a quick introduction on the Urban and Community Forestry Society. Then I'm going to turn it over to Eric North of the Arbor Day Foundation, where he'll talk about evaluating local tree ordinances and talk to us more about the Arbor Day Foundation Ordinance Assessment Tool. I just got a message that people can't hear me. You're hearing me, right? Okay. So Eric's going to discuss the ordinance assessment tool, which is a great resource for us all to be measuring across national best practices and start ranking yourself. So I'll let him go into that into more detail. A little over the top of the hour, we're going to move into moderated breakout rooms. We'll introduce you to your moderators. You will select which breakout room you want to go into, and we'll walk you through that process here in a second. And then finally, we'll come back together for a Q&A together. So maybe you wanted to ask a question across one of the other types of ordinance breakout rooms that you weren't able to join. Maybe you want to have a larger discussion together with the group. We'll come back for about 20 minutes at the end of that to come together. And then at the very end, we'll close out and we'll give you the CEU form to submit for ISA CEUs. And we will submit those on your behalf. So as we get started here, love to see where everyone's from. Please put your name and where you're from in the chat. Let's start to see the global network that's here today with us. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel afterwards. Again, ISA CEUs, this is approved for 1.5 ISA CEUs. We'll submit that on your behalf. As we're going today, you get the chance in those breakout rooms and when we come back to ask questions, but please use the chat or the Q&A feature. You'll see those across the top of your screen. Drop in whatever questions that come up on your mind, and I'll help moderate those and ask those of our presenters and moderators here at the end of the time. So if you aren't familiar with the Urban and Community Forestry Society, or UCFS, our mission is to build the confidence, competence, and camaraderie of all professionals who manage trees and forests to create and sustain more livable communities. So breaking that down more, really we're just the professional membership home for the people who make or support a daily tree care decision. You decide who, what, where, when, why, or how a tree goes in the ground, comes out of the ground. That is why you would want to be a member of the society, because we help you think about those in different ways. We help connect you to a network of folks across the globe who are also doing this work, and we help raise your voice. So again, just like doctors, nurses, or lawyers have an association, we get to have that as tree people, and that's what UCFS is here for. To help support our members, we provide a variety of information and programs to help you feel you're most confident in the decisions you're making. need you. You are the people who are making our trees thrive, and we want to make sure that you feel like you've got all the information you need to have healthy, flourishing urban forests. Our City Trees publication, our mentorship program, which will be opening here in the next couple of months. We have our annual conference coming up in St. Louis in November, Municipal Forestry Institute, accreditation, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more in depth here in just a second, our monthly learning series, and our members only membership hub that's online. So you can get on there and ask questions at any time, connect with others across the globe. So that is a members only benefit. And again, hope that you join us if you're not a member. So I just cannot thank our members enough. I hope that you've been on a number of these learning series and seen the power of the information that we're giving to folks. So I hope that you'll join us. And if you are a member, really thank you for being here. So I'm seeing a lot of great places coming in through the chat, seeing Oregon, Florida. I'm sure there's others that I'm missing right now. So I'm going to now transition over to the accreditation program because I want to chat with you and just sort of like lay the foundation of what accreditation is and particularly how this is going to tie into our ordinance discussion. So if you weren't familiar, UCFS has an accreditation, which is to accredit communities for achieving urban forestry standards. This is separate and different than credentialing, which is credentialing is for you as an individual. See accreditation for your community or program as a whole. And accreditation has a number of goals, and we've laid those out for ourselves because we've actually revamped it. If you might have been familiar with our old program, we've completely turned it upside down and completely redone it because we wanted to meet modern goals of the urban forestry profession. We wanted to establish UCFS and its members as the premier experts on urban forestry. Our accreditation program was made by and for urban foresters, and you are the experts. You know how urban forestry functions on the ground. We need to make sure that's reflected in our standards and how we hold ourselves accountable for the work we do. And that leads to this rigorous yet accessible accreditation program. So it's not an easy program, not an easy accreditation to get, and it shouldn't be because standards mean something and they need to be rigorous, and we need to prove to everyone that we work with, the public works folks, the parks folks, that we know what we're doing because we do. And when you meet standards, you can then prove that to others. And within an association space or profession, having self-regulation is really important. You see this with doctors, you see this with lawyers. They self-regulate to say, we know what the best practices are, and we're going to not recognize. We might remove somebody's license type of thing if they're not doing what they should. I'm just using that as an example. So standards help us self-regulate and make sure that we're meeting the best standards or best urban forestry practices out there. So we can, I'm sure Carla has put a link in the chat. If she hasn't, she'll do that here shortly. And you can see all of the different standards, which there are 4 now, 4 broad categories. And we're going to zoom in onto 2, but first I just wanted to lay the overall groundwork for you. So we have urban forestry leadership, which is saying we have somebody on staff that knows what they're doing. We credential, we keep up on that. Number 2 is urban forest governance and planning, all about we've got the rules and plans in place for a healthy forest, and we have the funding as well. So we know what we're doing, we've got it laid out, and now we can move on to standard 3, which is all about urban forest management. Now that we have the rules and plan in place, how are we putting it into action? What's our daily operations look like? Is it based in sound arboriculture practice? So it's all focused on tree planting, pruning, enforcement and preservation, and then urban forestry safety and monitoring. And finally, we have community engagement. So this encompasses outreach programs, public relation, and partnerships and collaboration. And actually, our breakout rooms touch on many of these things, including enforcement under standard 3, and community engagement participation, which we'll have a breakout group on, and encompasses standard 4. So the reasons why and the goals of accreditation are to set the standards of practice. How do we know that we've achieved? How do we know that we've done what is most important for our urban forest? Now that we have these from the organization made by and for urban foresters, we've got a roadmap that shows us where we need to go to have a top tier urban forestry program. So either you can now compare yourself to these standards and say, my goodness, we're doing what we need to. We have a steward or a champion level program. We could become accredited. Might not be there yet. You're struggling with your city council, you're struggling with your public works director, and now you've got a roadmap to say, hey, if we just did 2 more things, if we did 5 more things, we would have a champion level program. I really think that we could get there. I think it's important. We need to be keeping up with standards. Here they are. So we hope that we'll provide you a roadmap through this. Additionally, having this come from this organization, UCFS provides an independent source of information to the public. It's not just you going to your constituents saying, we're a good program. I can tell you, I promise you, which is good. You should do that. But it also allows it to come from a third party to say, hey, someone else told us that we know what we're doing. You know how people love to hear it from someone else outside of their circle. So we can now provide that for you to have that independent, rigorously reviewed process for you. And it helps provide avenues for educational development and advocate for you as the member. So having these standards help us go out to American Public Works Association, National Parks and Rec, others to say, here's how the urban forestry program should look. Hopefully you'll incorporate this into your practices as well. So zooming in a little bit more, this is what we're going to focus on. Very shortly here, I'm going to turn this over to Eric to talk more about Ordinances 101 and the tool that Arbor Day has come up with. It's all really based on Standard 2, which again was Urban Forest Governance and Planning, particularly 2.1, which is all about public tree ordinances. And we want to talk overall about why urban forest ordinances are matter and how your community can improve yours. So we know, I don't need to tell you this, but trees are a critical city asset and they grow over time. They appreciate and value. One of the few things in our cities that appreciates and value. And we here at the organization really want people to start seeing these as the critical asset they are, just like pipe, street, park, sign, everything within our city they should be seeing trees as one of those pieces of infrastructure. And we need to enforce those and protect them with strong ordinances. And ordinances ensure long-term stewardship, not just reactive management. Probably things you know, and that's why you're here today, to help improve what you have on the books now. This is everything that's underneath 2.1 public ordinance from the standard. I mentioned that we want to help provide a roadmap for you. I'm not going to go through all of these. Much of what's on here, we're actually going to dive into during our breakout sessions today. I will call on a few, like an ordinance should include a purpose, goals, and scope. A clear purpose statement helps everyone understand why trees matter locally, and a clear scope ensures that there's no gray areas about what's covered and what's not. And it should have clearly explained purposes and goals because it's a tool for long-term community vision, not just a rule book for your city. And one of the other things is here, we're looking for ordinance to be reviewed in the last 10 years. Now, I'm saying just reviewed, not updated, because sometimes it's not appropriate to keep updating your ordinances because you might not want to open yourself up to any sort of city council issues or anything like that, but it should at least be reviewed. So if yours hasn't been, I hope that today is a start for that. It's just like our trees, our ordinances need that attention too. And a few ways that we can help improve them over time. And again, we're going to discuss these today to compare yours to national best practices, engaging community stakeholders, and making sure that ordinance can be clearly enforced. Such an issue, I know, I bet there's a lot of people looking to talk about that, but we know is really critical to making sure it's got the teeth and power that it needs. And a strong ordinance doesn't just tell us how to manage trees, it also protects the public and it helps ensure a healthier, more flourishing urban forest. And as I said at the very top of this, it's one of the most powerful tools that you can have on hand to make sure the urban forest is shaped the way you want it, and it leaves for the next generation what you had intended for overall management of urban forestry. With that, I'm now going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to kick it over to Eric, and he's going to talk about Arbor Day's Tree Ordinance Assistant and overall kind of a 101, probably going into a little bit more of what I just covered here in a little bit more depth of why this is so important. Eric, I'm going to stop sharing and kick it over to you.
All right, thank you. You can see my screen?
Yes.
Excellent. Um, Thank you first to Leslie and Carla for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to talk about Arbor Day's work and tool. And my name is Eric North. I'm the program manager of urban forestry at the Arbor Day Foundation, and I help lead the Tree City USA program. I think it's nice to think about what the general purpose of ordinances, laws are, and they're really policy for public good. So when we think about tree ordinances, I, as a tree professional, and I'm sure many of you think, how do we protect the trees? It's all about the trees. But I'd like you to encourage you to have you think that ordinances and public policy are really about making the community better for the people living in the community, and that trees are the tool that we use in order to help that improvement within the community. So I know some people in communities get nervous about ordinances or laws, or what can I or can't I do? And so this is a way to really frame it as this is good for everybody and should really improve the community that you're working with or living in. Just like we have right tree, right place equals maximize benefits, I'd like you to think about the right ordinance in the right place can also help maximize those benefits. Thinking about that and thinking about all the great things we can do, it's important to also consider some of the unintended consequences. So just like the picture in this photo in the background, you can see that nobody intended for that tree to land on that car. At least I don't think so. This is what happened from some poor planting that happened years in the past, and then a little bit of a wind and a tree came down. That's an unintended consequence. And we can have the same thing when we think about policies and ordinances and laws. So I was fortunate several years ago to be able to do some work in Botswana, which is a country in Southern Africa. And you might be thinking, cool, we don't have a lot of elephants in our community. I get that. But I want to use this as an example of an unintended consequence of policy when we're thinking about managing of natural resources. So elephants in Botswana, at least at the time, were very, very well protected. And elephants, being smart animals, figured out that if they were within the confines of Botswana, they were safer. And so elephants tended to migrate to Botswana, which was great for the elephants. And also in Botswana, there are the baobabs, which are great trees. This is me and some students doing a baobab measuring and location project. It's a fantastic tree and very important both culturally and economically to the region. Unfortunately, there's a conflict in the interaction between elephants and baobabs. When you have a lot of elephants, they go after the baobabs because baobabs have a lot of water and moisture content in them. And so by protecting the elephants, they also wanted to protect the baobabs, but there was a massive conflict there. Now, I'm not going to pretend to have a great solution for this particular one, so I'm going to go on to the next example. But this is just something to consider if you're protecting one thing, what's maybe happening to another resource that has value within your communities as well. This is another example from a city that some of you may be more familiar with this example. So pollinators are recognized in this community as having a lot of importance. And of course, pollinators are very important, all different types of pollinators. And this community, in wanting to protect, recognizing the value of the pollinators and wanting to protect those pollinators, decided to ban all pesticides on city land. So on anything that was public or controlled or managed by the city, they were not allowed to use any pesticides. And then this same city ended up having to deal with the emerald ash borer. And unfortunately, the banning of pesticides on all city land also meant that they were not allowed to inject trees with pesticides. And so this eliminated a tool from the urban forester's toolkit in order to manage a particular pest and pathogen. And so in order to try and help save some of the ash, the city reacted to this and decided they would open up a no-cost permit for homeowners, that they could apply for a permit to make sure they had an ash tree and that it was in good enough shape. And the homeowner could then pay a private company to treat a public street tree. And that seemed like a pretty good idea. And a lot of places ended up using that. A lot of different communities either banded together to save ash trees or individual homeowners. The unfortunate or unintended consequence of that is that only the wealthier neighborhoods could really afford to treat those trees. And so there ended up with a disparity between wealthier neighborhoods and neighborhoods that were struggling economically in order to save those canopies. So you saw a canopy decline in neighborhoods that had less finances to afford that treatment. And that was definitely not an intended consequence. And so thinking about how you can try to incorporate as much of that as possible in talking with folks throughout the community. So community support is really critical. And as I was fortunate to work on this paper, and these were just a few of the challenges that folks talked about, urban foresters and foresters in general. And one of the things that they mentioned that wasn't a challenge, but was really vital, was community support. And so think of that as you're doing any of the work in your communities, really making sure the community understands what you're doing, they can advocate for you, they can help you move ahead in some of your initiatives. That's why I really like the term community forestry, because I think it takes an involved community and residents can be valuable resources for help increasing our capacity, our advocacy, and success of our forestry initiatives. And community forestry is a great reminder that the work we do is for everybody, not just certain groups. And by everybody, I really mean residents, our nonprofits, our businesses. That includes land developers, and of course our government and municipal employees, both tree people and non-tree people. That's really what we're trying to help and advance for everybody. So getting community support is really a vital part of this process. And hopefully this comes out in some of your discussions, to making sure that you're involving not only residents and community members, but maybe your city's going through a lot of development. And so you want to incorporate what developers' needs are, because you have other economic concerns within your communities. This came out in a conversation I had recently. Science and standards change through time. And so as you're writing your ordinances and you're thinking about including standards, which I hope that you are, using best practices and standards, this is just some excerpts, just kind of randomly picked from an ANSI guide to show that the one on the left here is from 2012. The one on the right is the most recent version, both dealing with root ball size and the same thing, but there have been changes. And so if you're incorporating some sort of standard or best management practice, maybe phrasing something like ANSI A300's most recent standard on root ball size, so that you're not you're incorporating that into the language of an ordinance, but you're not necessarily using the exact language in the standard, so that your ordinance, if you're not revisiting it every year, maybe you're only revisiting it every 10 years, can still be pointing to the most recent standards updates and or changes as we understand the science changes, as we understand some of those standards change. So just making sure that you're thinking about, when you incorporate those, how they can be relevant for longer periods of time. This month has been all about ordinances for me. So last week, the Arbor Day Foundation had also a webinar on ordinances, and I think that we recorded that, and that's available. And I think I saw Lee Mueller is on the call today. Lee Mueller and Dr. Richard Norton both presented, and they did a fantastic job of really delving into some of the deep legal challenges and things you might encounter. So if you want, you can scan the QR code. The video is available for you to watch, not right now, but at a later time. So really a great resource for you if you would like. With that, I'm going to go through really quickly how to use our Tree Care Ordinance Assistance tool that the Arbor Day Foundation recently released as of January of this year. This tool is not so much a, here's an ordinance, it's a template, download it and try to insert it into your municipal code. This is really about guidance for you. So we've sectioned it out into different types of ordinances or different ordinance clauses that you might have. And you can work through a very basic assessment. And I'll go through that really quickly. It doesn't take long to do. And then I'll show you what that results page looks like. And thank you, Carla, for pasting the link in the chat. And I'll say this is a free tool. It's available for anybody that would like to use it. So this isn't, you don't have to be part of our networks. This is really for anybody. One of the things you'll notice, or I hope you notice as you go to the tool, we have in several places put these notices on to make sure that you're working with, as you're developing your ordinance, you're working with your community's legal counsel to ensure that you're in compliance with both state and local laws and that it's fitting in with your overarching ordinance structure and municipal code structure. There's also some notices there on whether or not you're a Dillon rule state or a home rule state or some combination thereof. As this is a tool for the entire nation, we wanted to make sure people were at least thinking about these things as they're reading through the resources. So when you first get to the tool, and I'll show you how to do that, you can take this assessment where you'd enter in your basic information. We don't sell this information. So this is just to help us. If you had questions, we can reach out to you. As you go through each of the different ordinance slides, you'll see there's just a series of 8 questions. And part of these are also in line with what Leslie just shared for UCFS. Accreditation. So do you have a purpose statement? And then we give you some indication of whether or not you have a basic one, a moderate or intermediate one, or an advanced. And maybe you don't have a purpose statement at all. And so you'll answer each of these questions. Who's responsible for tree decisions in your community? This is very important. I believe Leslie also pointed that out. And you can see there's different ratings here. I've selected for each of these questions just a smattering of different responses so you could see what that results page would look like. Do you have rules for keeping existing trees? Some communities do, some communities do not. Are there rules for protecting trees during construction projects? And you might have some, you might not have any. What happens when trees are removed? Do you have some sort of replacement component to your ordinance? We know that trees do need to be removed for either development or maybe there's a dangerous tree or storms have come through. So do you have something about what happens when that tree is removed? Do you have standards for new planting trees? I just showed you some of the ANSI standards on root ball size. This is a great place to incorporate some of those. How do you make sure that you're planting good trees that are going to last and provide those benefits? Any guidance on how trees are cared for? For instance, do you have to have certified arborists or can anybody prune trees? What about city trees versus private trees? So taking a look at those parts. And then what happens if somebody violates your rules? This is the enforcement part of ordinances. Do you have some mechanism to enforce those ordinances? Once you've answered all those questions, you'll land on a page like this. And you can see that we've rated based on your responses each of the different sections that we've focused on as being basic, intermediate, or advanced. And through here, you can then click on the Strengthen Ordinance link, and I'll show you that in just a second, to look through what those different options might be. And we've also provided examples for each of those. Also on that page is an FAQ, so you can look through that results page and get some, hopefully this will help you answer any questions. And we've provided some additional resources here. And I'm going to stop sharing the slide and hopefully you can see the website. Is that right? A thumbs up from someone?
Yes.
Yes, we can see it.
Oh. Excellent. So this is the results page. I just skipped directly to the results. You will be able to select any of these that you're interested in. And so I'm going to just pick one here. If we look at authority and credentials, you'll see you'll get the little notices here to make sure that you're working with the legal department in. There's an introduction about what this particular section would pertain to. We've given you some of the definitions and some of the certifications you might be looking at as it comes to incorporating those within your ordinance, and then as you scroll down, you'll see some example language here. You can copy and paste this into a clipboard and use that. That's not so much that you would just copy, paste it, and submit it as your ordinance, but rather so you can copy, paste it, and then tweak it or work with it as you need within your community. So basic ordinance, this is what it might look like for your community. And if you scroll down a little bit more, we've given examples of these are ordinances that exist and are accessible online that you can look through that we felt met our sort of basic criteria. So you can see real world examples. And then as you go back to the top here, you can see intermediate or advanced and much the same. So you'll be able to see examples and then some basics of what we're determining, decided to call intermediate, and then same with advanced with examples. So that's how the ordinances work for each of those sections. I'm not going to go through each section. You can explore those on your own. The link is in the chat. If you forget, you can always go to the Tree City USA page, and we have it under our ordinance assistance as one of the tools or the resources that you can use. One of the questions that I've gotten, and I know others have probably gotten, has been, what level is the best? I remember talking about this a few months ago, and somebody said, well, should everybody be advanced? Is that the right level? And we intentionally chose not to use good, better, best, or gold, platinum, silver, that type of language as it pertained to ordinances, because we feel that, especially looking through all the Tree City USA applications and reading through all of those ordinances, we have communities that are 20 people, and we have communities that are millions of people, like New York City. And clearly what's going to be the best ordinance for New York City is not going to be the same for the 20-person community. And so depending upon what your community needs, where you're at, what kind of community support you have, that will determine what language is most appropriate for you. So if you don't have an ordinance at all, maybe starting with basic and then building from there as you're evaluating and revisiting your ordinance to figure out what is working, what isn't working, would be the method that I would recommend, as opposed to trying to just jump to the advanced right away. And with that, I think we're ready to get together and chat. I want to say thank you, especially from myself and from the Arbor Day Foundation. We know we can't do any of the work we do without trained folks like yourselves and communities that are engaged and involved. So thank you so much. If you have questions about anything around the tool or the Tree City program, please feel free to send me an email. Be happy to chat with you. And thank you.
That was a great primer for us. And the goal of my intro about accreditation was to say we've got some rules in place and standards that you can help move your community along if it's not there. And then seeing what Eric's doing. Okay, we're ready to go. What's the tool I can put into practice right away? And so now you have that opportunity to go over and check out Arbor Day's tool and see where you rank, and awesome way to be able to do that. Move into breakout rooms. So our brains are moving. Now let's dive into it a little bit more and ask each other questions, hear from one another to help troubleshoot each other's problems. I'm going to share my screen, and Carla is going to go over the rules so that we all know how this is working. So Carla, take it away.
Great. Thanks, everyone. So really excited to open this up and get to hear from you guys. So I just want to review the breakout room sessions, just so you guys have a heads up and know what to expect. So we'll have about 30 minutes in the breakout groups. Each of the breakout rooms are going to be moderated by a moderator, and I'll introduce them in just a minute. After the breakout group session, we'll return to this main room and have some time for Q&A with all the moderators. So if you have a question for someone, you weren't able to be in a room with them, or you didn't have time to ask your question, you will have time at the end. In the breakout group session, the moderator will just introduce themselves and the topic briefly, and then we'll have time to hear from you. So if you brought a question or an ordinance that you need some support on, you'll have about 5 minutes to share your situation and get some feedback. And hopefully we'll have time for at least 5 people, if not more, to be able to share some questions and get some feedback from everyone else in the room. Just want to just say out there that sometimes virtual group discussions can be a little awkward and challenging. So please just help us kind of roll through it. And, we never know how it's going to be. So we really appreciate your patience in this and as we do this. And so, I put together just a couple of guidelines just to make it easier and equitable for everyone. And we just really ask that you respect all the perspectives in the room and share the space and make room for everyone to have a chance to speak if they want to. To make it easier for everyone and just more welcoming, we ask that you turn on your camera if it's possible. When we launch the breakout rooms, we will enable everybody's camera and mic. So just a warning to you, it might get a little loud there in the very beginning. Please mute your camera if you're not speaking, and we encourage you to keep mute your audio if you're not speaking, and but leave your camera on if you're comfortable and you're able to. If you would like to speak, please raise your hand using the raise hand feature. And the first time you talk, please introduce yourself so we know who you are. We are going to be following the Chatham House rules, and if you're not familiar with them, I'm going to just put a link to Chatham House rules in the chat. And essentially, Chatham House rules say that the speaker's identity and where they work in the meeting should remain anonymous outside of the meeting. So you're free to talk about the things you hear, just not associate them with an individual or an employer. And that way, hopefully, everyone will feel comfortable talking. Let's see. I think I've hit all of that. I want to just mention a couple of things before I introduce our moderators. You might feel like you need a little bit more support or you have more questions and that you're not able to get answered. So if that's the case, please, you have my email, please hit me up. We can try to connect you with someone who can answer your questions or a peer coach. So if you don't have time in this meeting, please let me know and I'll try to connect you with someone outside of the meeting. You might see me popping in and out of the breakout groups. So I'll be popping in and seeing if the moderator needs any support or any help. So we're going to be launching the breakout groups, after we hear from the moderators. I'm just going to introduce them real quick. Leslie, can you just switch to the next slide? So I've just put all the moderators in alphabetical order. And so Daria, if you wouldn't mind just putting on your camera for a minute and just giving a shout out. We've got
Hello,
Daria.
good morning, good afternoon.
Thanks, Daria. Daria's from Hort Science and Bartlett Counseling. She will be moderating the Public Tree Ordinance breakout group. Eric North, you've met, is going to be moderating Ordinances 101. Also, if you don't have a preference or that there's some challenges, that's going to be the main room, and Eric will be in that room. And Jen Cairo is from the city of Portland. She's the Forester and Urban Forestry Manager. Jen, can you put your camera on for a second?
Yeah, hello everyone. And it's Oregon, not Maine.
Did I say Maine?
No.
Okay, good.
You're good, Carly. You're good.
Okay, good. And we've got John O'Neill from Washington, D.C. He's the lead forester. He's going to be moderating the ordinance enforcement. John, can you give a shout out?
Hi, everyone.
Thanks. And we have Thomas Brandon from the Morton Arboretum. He's the community specialist, and he's going to be moderating the ordinances and community participation breakout group.
Hello, everyone. Look forward to talking about community participation shortly.
Great. Thank you. So we're going to be launching the breakout groups.
Issues, ask questions of one another. So this is our first time bringing it into our webinar format. So we can play with the timing, we can play with the format. Your feedback really appreciated as we keep improving every single educational event we put on. But the goal now was to have some bigger group discussion and maybe ask questions of other moderators that you weren't able to go into their breakout room, or just ask some general questions here. So maybe as we get started, you could put some questions in the chat if you wanted to, or use the Q&A feature. And I might ask the moderators to share some of the highlights to help get us going from your rooms. So you feel free to take it away, one of our moderators.
There were two sort of main themes in the public tree ordinance room. And one of the main themes was a issue with responsibility over public and private sort of joint ownership or maintenance requirements of public trees. That came up quite a bit for several different communities. And then another discussion, kind of switching gears to something that Leslie and I have talked about a bit about with communities throughout the country who are dealing with a new regulation, federal regulation called PRO-WAG, as well as some other acronyms that I NACTO and ASHTO, I believe, but essentially minimizing tree planting space in the public right-of-way because of different types of traffic rules and regulations around sidewalk distances and distances to streetlights and stop signs and such.
Did you guys solve it? Did you figure out how to fix it?
No, unfortunately not. But it did highlight for me the importance of getting back to writing a position, UCSF writing a position paper that can be used throughout the country around really highlighting the importance of trees in our communities. And that was a real theme that came out of it, was that focus on importance of trees in our communities and the benefits that they provide.
Yeah, thanks, Daria. Well, I see a question in the chat from Becky, and that might, I see. Go ahead, Jen. Yeah.
No need. Go with Becky. I was going to report
Okay.
out, but.
Well, and then, yeah, that sounds great, because I'll kick it over to John since this is from the enforcement group. So Becky asked, any recommendations from starting from the beginning on enforcement? For example, you have a tree ordinance and no enforcement. So John, maybe some highlights from your group. If you feel like you've got any wisdom on that, we could also ask the rest of the group about starting from zero on enforcement.
Yeah, well, in our group, Bruce Avery said something that I thought was wise, which is just that, you need to look at your law and see what it says and make sure you understand what it says. This is how we did it, so like 10, 15 years ago, there wasn't a lot of enforcement happening in DC. We just, but there were enforcement rules written out. And so we looked, okay, well, how do you issue notice of infraction? What regulations and what code do you need to follow in order to issue it? Once we had that, we started work issuing it, and then it's just kind of like trial by error. You're not going to get it right every time. You're probably not getting it right the first time. My first tree case, I not only won, but it felt like a loss because, this big, beautiful walnut tree went uncompensated for. But, you just learn as you go. If you need to talk to people in other agencies who are responsible for enforcement, I think that came up in our group too. Like if the division of labor for enforcement is split among different agencies, this is a pretty low tech kind of solution that might come across as obvious, but we're like, just go make friends with them, find common ground, bring them some Pepsi. That was recommended by Wendy, and go from there. But try to find out, what sort of common ground you have that you can build off of.
Yeah. Actually, see that from Danielle. Was Danielle in your group? Danielle, would you mind coming off mute and sharing some of your hard-earned wisdom? You've been through some of the ringer on some of the projects you've worked on.
Yeah, absolutely. The comment that I made, and this is semi-selfish too, because my new role, I'm the director of planning and urban development for my city, but I'm also the tree warden, so I get to still play with trees. My comment was that when you're developing ordinances, lean into the people who do this all the time. Your planning department does ordinance amendments and creation all the time. And so like they can help noodle through what the repercussions would be if you put something in place. They've got the experience. Your clerk's office owns these ordinances typically. And so they're the ones that are going to be like signing off on them once your city council approves them. So, make sure you're not doing this in a municipal silo, that you're leaning into those other departments. So that's my, parting advice.
Thanks, Danielle.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm seeing a few questions come in. I wonder, Thomas, did you have something you wanted to say in regard to that, or share some wisdom from your group?
Absolutely. Would love to build off of Danielle's comment. So in our group where we discussed community participation processes, one of the lasting themes was leveraging partnerships and just emphasizing that nonprofits exist within your area, or most likely do, as well as community extensions and other community groups. So when it comes to gaining buy-in and really improving or amending ordinances, just that engagement process doesn't have to be alone. You can rely on those partners that are nearby.
Yeah. Jen, how about some highlights from yours, and then we'll go into some of the questions we see in the chat after also hearing from Eric.
Sure. We covered a lot of ground. We had at least 5 different topics. One started us off strong with strategy to update an ordinance, like do it all at once or do some. Lots of good input on that. And another topic was tree protection specifications and standards. And some of those were shared in the chat, and there was conversations about that, including people say when they're developing a site, they're going to do certain things, and then they sometimes do not. We also talked about silos, so avoiding silos, so working with colleagues who are other infrastructure managers, creating relationships with them and trying to help them achieve their goals while achieving the tree goals. Questions about heritage trees, how they're defined and how they're regulated. And the upshot there is that definition is all over the map across the country, it looks like. And also about how to address species diversity in ordinances. And I think the prevailing wisdom and experience there was perhaps not something to have in an ordinance, because it can change and should change more quickly than ordinances generally do. So have it somewhere else that is backed by the ordinance.
Thanks. Eric, any highlights you think from our 101 no preference / couldn't be assigned a room group?
Yeah, the catch-all group. I think there were a couple of important things that came out, and one of them has already been talked about and supported, which is working with other departments within your community to both communicate what you want to do with trees and to learn what those other departments' priorities are. So you can try to align those as best you can, and you can get some buy-in internally in order to have a strong tree ordinance that people are happy, or at least willing to, if they're not happy about it, but at least willing to make sure is incorporated into the work that they're doing is very important. One of the other aspects is thinking about how small communities versus large communities might deal with tree ordinances. If you don't have a big department that you can lean on that have written ordinances, or even support some of the tree care, having that incorporated into an ordinance, if some of that tree care for maybe street trees is going to be, the city needs the homeowner or the resident to do that, making sure that that's spelled out clearly in the ordinance with some guidelines, like, hey, you can prune or remove the tree, but you still need to check with the city and get maybe a no cost or low cost permit, so the city can also be aware of what you're doing and maybe talk to you about it, and make sure that there's some controls on that when you don't have a huge budget for managing trees within your community. So looking at that as different size communities, really small versus some of the larger communities.
Yeah, and this might actually help lead into a question from Brian, and Jen, I see you responded, so if you wanted to elaborate, but first I'll read it. Brian asked, should a tree ordinance specify who owns this tree in the public right of way? We specify exclusive jurisdiction and supervision falls to the director. That is not the same as ownership. Jen, you had a response, and curious if any of the moderators or anyone else in our group has a response about that.
I can say that I've seen it in a couple of different instances of communities where anything in the boulevard is under the purview of usually public works within a community. And I hope I don't get this wrong, but I believe it's in Minneapolis here where I live, the boulevard is controlled, that space is owned by Public Works. But the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Department is responsible for street trees, and they legally have a green, I think they call it a green easement, where the land is owned by Public Works, but the tree is actually owned by MPRB, and because they have this easement, so it's a more complicated structure than other communities, I think. But a lot of times I think that is spelled out in just the land ownership. So it might not be in the ordinance, but it's under who actually owns the land.
Yeah. Jen, did you have any more? You said talk to your attorney.
Yeah, I can't really elaborate on that, but I think there are different legal perspectives in different municipalities, different organizational units. So that's an important stop to make along the way. I appreciate what everyone else is saying too. It really comes down to money and the lack thereof. We in Portland have adjacent street tree responsibility on the property owner, and it's been there a long time. And so our team is always like, oh, this is a terrible policy. It should be the city doing that. And we are now funded to start piloting that. But really, if that funding doesn't continue, the outcomes will not be any better. So money is a key factor there. And I'll mention this too. We have found that that policy of the adjacent property owner being responsible for the tree, which is a city asset, has contributed negatively to equity in our canopy distribution, very decidedly. Folks who generally don't have as many resources are less likely to put it into taking care of the city's tree in front of their house. They're rather going to spend it on their roof or what have you. And that pattern is really strongly established in Portland, where low income tracks with low canopy and communities of color really closely.
Yeah. Wow, you really teed that up well for Jillian's question. I think made this a good way to take us out for our webinar today, and love all the moderators, anyone on the call to help answer this. Would folks advise having street tree responsibilities with a municipality or adjacent property owner? Any preference? And I kicked off my talk about how we see trees as critical assets like pipe, sign, light, anything that's on the asset book for your city. And so we don't expect homeowners to take on that responsibility. But I'd be curious how you would see that. And Jenny, you just add a little bit. Daria came on to camera. Anything you would say about what you think's good or bad or best practice for the municipality, or push it on to the adjacent property owner?
In California, as a lot of folks know, California is a pretty litigious state. So my concern with private property owners being asked to maintain trees in the right of way is just that there would be some kind of litigation around that, because if the city takes ownership of that area, they can't give away that liability. And that is something I've kind of leaned into over the years that I've worked in urban forestry, by saying to cities, just because you are saying that this tree is going to be maintained by a private property owner doesn't mean that you can get rid of that liability. And that oftentimes will turn the heads of important folks. The other thing that I lean into a lot around public-private partnerships is really rallying my community members who care a lot about the importance of trees in their communities. And that in general means leaning into the areas that have larger parkways, bigger trees, more canopy cover, and leaning into that community to help other people in the community get the benefits of trees in their area. Something I forgot to mention in our breakout session, that I think it goes to this issue is I've seen communities sort of get together in smaller districts where they pay a little bit of a tax within that district, and then they get some other benefits for paying the tax. And one of those benefits is often street trees. So if there's a downtown business district, they can contribute a tax or what have you, and that downtown business district can actually be connected to other areas of the community, so that there is some equity around that. It often works really well in bigger cities where you have, several 12 or 13 different community downtown business districts or what have you, and then there's some equity around it.
Yeah, thanks, Daria. Well, we are coming up at the top of I guess half hour past. That's how I should say that. I see a hand up. I'm so sorry. We will have to wrap up here, and definitely email Carla or the rest of or somebody on this call, and we'll help make sure to connect you with whatever we can to help with your issue. In the chat is a link for feedback to this webinar and learning series. So please let us know. Again, this is our first time doing this format. Would like to hear what you think. The second link in the chat is for CEUs. We will submit that on your behalf. If you're having issues accessing that, you'll just email Carla and we'll get you all taken care of. Next month is all going to be about tree inventories and data management. And so how do we efficiently use our tree inventory for data management, work order management, everything in between. All of our learning series are going to be supporting our accreditation standards and ISA certified urban forest professional to make you feel your most confident, help you get prepared for accreditation or credentialing down the line. So that's our aim for the rest of the year. Appreciate you being with us today. We'll see you next month. Thanks, everybody. Bye.